So then, the iRacing 2026 Season 3 build is officially here, and it is including a lot of long-awaited features. Now, including the new Qualcomm circuit, we've also got the Laguna Seca rescan, we've got new built-in overlays, we've got new dynamic track updates as well, new pit speed limiter updates, but most importantly, the trees at St. Petersburg have been made a more accurate green colour. Now, obviously I'm just joking. The most important thing that we're going to be looking at today is actually the new GT3s. They've got a complete rework of the traction control and the ABS, and there's a couple little tweaks actually that I'm feeling within the car when driving them that I didn't specifically see in the patch notes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at the patch notes, have a quick look at what they actually described that they've done to the GT3s, and then we're going to get out on track and actually try it for ourselves. So then, the first thing I want to take a quick look at is the series specific sporting regulations. So this is a new change that iRacing have brought in, and it basically means depending on the series that you're racing in and what the regulations are, fuel and tyres will now either be done at the same time, like they are in real life IMSA events, or they will now be separate. So if you're doing like an NEC race, for example, I'm sure you've seen the clip online of Basic Ollie doing a refuel and it was like almost a 2-minute pit stop. That is now going to be in effect from the start of this new season. So depending on what championship you're racing in, strategy could be slightly different. We could potentially see double stinting tyres becoming a thing now, with the fuel and tyres being done separately in specific events. So this could hopefully throw up a little bit more strategy in these special events, which of course we've seen a lot of people talking about in the recent months. The strategy and the strategic battles that you used to see years ago don't really happen too much nowadays, that we have the fuel and tyres done at the same time and it's just take tyres every single time, and that's just the absolute quickest way to go. With this new rule set, there is definitely the potential for there to be some strategy games. It could also influence car choice. Maybe there's a specific car that's better on tyres compared to the rest and can do double stints compared to some other cars that might have to take tyres every single run as the tyres physically won't last. I'm really interested to see how this works. Of course, we've got the Watkins Glen 6 hour this weekend, so fuel and tyres are going to be done at the same time as it's replicating an IMSA event. But when we get to like the 24 hours of Spa, that's not an IMSA regulated event, so that is going to potentially have some implications with the strategy. We could see some double stints or just simply taking tyres every single pit stop. That still remains to be seen. What I want to do now though is scroll down and find the GT3 section and show you guys just what iRacing are actually talking about with what changes they've made. So here we have the GT3 specific updates. So of course, as we see here, they explain that the new NEC regulations will result in simultaneous tyre and fuel pit stops, but with a much slower refueling rate. So the fuel and tyres will still be done at the same time in NEC races, but the fueling takes ages. I think it's not even at 1 litre per second, it's a much slower refuel. The IMSA regulations must be used for simultaneous tyre and fuel pit stops. But then when it comes to things like the DTM regulations, they will have ultra fast 4-tyre pit stops, and then for any unlisted regulations that may be selected, behaviour will be identical to the default regulations. So there's quite a few different things going on here. DTM is going to have much faster tyre stops, so you're going to be able to take 4 tyres in the pit stop before the fuel's done potentially. That still remains to be seen how quick the ultra fast actually is. So yeah, I'd be interested to see in the Watkins Glen 6 hour and then onwards what that actually sort of entails. But to move more on to like the car specific stuff, we've got an update to the drafting parameters for radiator cooling, which I find interesting. I don't know if this is going to mean that we're potentially going to have to manage engine temperatures if we're in a big pack for long enough. I doubt this will really have much of an effect on anything, if I'm honest. It's probably just one of those like small tweaks that iRacing want to make that makes the game slightly more realistic, but ultimately it's not going to actually affect how we have to drive or race. This one is interesting though. The drafting parameters for side-by-side racing have been adjusted, so that tells me that's something to do with the side drafting. Of course, we've seen right now with GT3s that the actual nose to rear slipstream isn't very strong. It's quite easy to stay in draft, but to actually get a run and overtake someone if you've got a slight speed deficit is incredibly difficult. But once you get into that side-by-side position, the side drafting, as we've seen in real life, is incredibly strong. We've seen that at like the 24 hours of Nürburgring or the NEC races or Le Mans, things like that, where these are long straights where cars are able to get side by side. The side draft is incredibly powerful, and that's definitely something that iRacing have lacked in recent years, is the actual strength of the side drafting. So I think this could be a good change, depending on how aggressive they've gone with the changes. Again, that still remains to be seen. But probably the two biggest points that we're going to talk about and look at in today's video is the traction control system has been updated significantly and the ABS parameters have been updated. Now this kind of terminology annoys me a little bit, because when they say that ABS parameters have been updated, don't give you any specifics about what's actually happened. It doesn't say that the ABS intervention is now more proactive rather than reactive, so it prevents or it reduces surface temperature degradation that we see currently, where the ABS engages just a little bit too late and then it scrubs the tyre, and then you end up with extra front slip and the tyre gradually starts to overheat more and more. But with the traction control, they've gone a little bit more in depth of what they've actually changed there. So the parameters have been tuned using feedback from a real-world professional GT driver. Who that is, I have no idea. Hopefully the Speaking Sense and iRacing have been able to take that information and actually implement it effectively. The other thing they've done is they've adjusted the range of the TC settings so that when you fit a wet tyre, you are required to have a wet setting TC. Before, even in the wet conditions, you would still run dry TC. In a lot of cases, you would actually run the TC toggle as well, where you could flick the TC off, and it would be quicker to drive on the exit of corners with no TC whatsoever and just manage it with your right foot rather than having the TC cutting the power too much. And just as we talk about the TC toggle, we move on to the next point where it says that the TC toggle may no longer be used above pit lane speed limit. So this is a huge one. For those of you who aren't aware, at an esports level, as we were coming out of a corner, especially if we're going over like a 3D curb, we would press the TC toggle because the TC would very slightly engage as you come over those curbs, and it would just hurt you run off the corner ever so slightly. It was only a 100th or 2 out of most corners really. It wasn't like a 10th per corner or anything crazy like that. It was really marginal gains, but it was worth anywhere from a 10th to a 10th and a half per lap, depending on the circuit that you're at, and of course depending on the curb layout as well, if you've got 3D curbs or not. So this is quite a big change from iRacing. Of course, this is still possible to toggle the TC. It's not rocket science. You bind a button to decrease TC, and as you come out of the corner, you spam the button a couple times, turn it off, and then you can turn it back on again. So the fix isn't foolproof. They've just disabled the toggle, but of course the same behaviour is still possible to replicate. So they've also fine-tuned a few balance performance things. Again, that remains to be seen how that's going to affect things. I don't have enough data personally to actually tell you exactly what has changed. But yeah, enough of looking at the patch notes. Let's get out on track and actually try it and explain to you guys what the new sort of meta is with the ABS and the TC. So we're in the server now, and I've loaded up just my Apex Racing Academy Watkins setup here. If you guys are wanting an Apex Racing Academy setup that's built by me, then please check the pinned comment in the comment section below. It's going to have a 10% off link for anyone who's interested in trying out some of my setups. So what did iRacing say? They said that they changed the TC and the ABS. So what we're going to do, if you look at the dashboard, now remember the Mercedes is a little bit reversed compared to the rest of the cars, so TC 12 is off and 11 is the minimum support while still having it enabled, and the ABS works the same way. So 12 on the ABS will be off, but we're going to start at 10 and see how that feels. Now for my testing so far, just whilst we get out on track here and kind of explore what the changes actually feel like, from my testing so far, the ABS seems quite nice in the sense that you can use a little bit more ABS than you could previously. It does definitely feel like you can sort of increase it a little bit, but lower ABS does still work really, really well. Of course, the lower ABS you have, the shorter your braking distances, but the potential that you're going to cause a little bit of front scrub and overheat the tyre. So the first thing I noticed when I get on track is actually the grip that you've got from cold tyres is quite impressive. I'm not sure if it's the TC update or if iRacing changed something in the back end and not put it in the patch notes, but the overall grip that you've got on cold tyres, more specifically from the rear, the traction is very, very strong. I mean, look, this is cold tyres with minimum TC without it being off, and I have absolutely no problem coming out of this corner being super aggressive like that. You know, I'm not being specifically smooth, trying to manage things. It's very, very confidence inspiring currently with the look at that, DC's not even really coming on. So that tells me that there's been a change somewhere with the tyres that just gives these cars a little bit more rear grip, specifically on throttle. Now when the TC's kicking in, it seems to cut quite heavily, even at a low intervention level. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to turn it up quite a bit. The highest you can have on dry is 6. And just watch the TC tab. as we're going down the straights and through the corners here. It's just on. It's completely on, even on the straights. Look at this. This isn't a wet setting. We'll go to 7, just to kind of prove the point. This is definitely a dry setting. The TC is coming on the straights. So, straight away, even though the car has like no visible oversteer or slip, the TC is still kicking in. And anytime you pick up throttle, it is just on. Now, what does it mean? It makes the cars incredibly easy to drive. So if you're someone who struggles with, you know, on throttle oversteer in a GT3, the TC now kind of works as intended in the sense of, you know, you can't ever get oversteer with this kind of TC setting. But for us at an esports level, what does this mean? It basically means that, you know, we're just killing speed on the exit. So we're going to do this lap here, we'll do a couple laps with TC7, and you can see it's still coming on, just going in a dead straight line. So obviously when TC kicks in, it cuts the engine power. And look at the drive off. That's compared to my out lap where I had colder tyres and I'm just losing time. But look, I can completely stand on it out of every single corner. The car doesn't move, but I am losing so much time. With the second to last corner, I'm just going to drive this lap like my throttle is on a button. Just on-off throttle. You guys will be able to see that obviously with the pedal cam. And we'll see what kind of lap time we can do with TC7. Then the lap after, we'll change the TC back down to 11. And we'll drive it a bit more properly. And we'll see what kind of differences there are and how much you can actually gain. See, even out here, it's a bit of a traction zone. I just stand on it. TC does the rest. Then again out here, this is one where you can be quite aggressive on the initial throttle, but then you need to kind of manage the rest. But now I can just plant the foot and it sticks. But the TC's kicking in on the straight again. It was like locked on as I was coming up over the top of that crest, so it's definitely an interesting change for iRacing. It's probably good news for drivers who struggle a little bit with rear end stability. You know, you can definitely use the TC to help. I mean, you can see even out here, like that's the lowest traction zone on the entire circuit, and I can just completely stand on it. So we'll come across the line here. We'll turn the TC back down to 11. Then let's see the difference. Of course, we've got slightly warmer tyres, so of course lap time will be quicker, but we're more interested in looking at the actual TC behaviour. Little flicker over that curb there, but look at the time we're getting. It is such a significant difference, and all the way up through the S's here where the TC was kicking in before and now it's not. You can see we're just pulling time like crazy. And this is just going to compound over the rest of the lap. Through the bus stop, very little TC engagement. We're not bogging down anymore. We're being more cautious on the throttle, but we're still gaining time. A little bit smoother out of there. I had to kind of modulate like the last 20% or so, or slow down the rate that I apply the throttle through this corner. You know, again, nice and patient with the last 25% compared to the previous lap. And look at the time we're just gaining on the straights, it's insane. So next lap, we're actually going to turn the TC off entirely and see how it is to drive. Is it manageable? Is it, you know, do you have to run it at 1? Or can you just turn the thing completely off? You can see already like the difference in my throttle input on some of these exits where I'm really having to slow down the application just to manage things. And even in the last corner there I picked up throttle a little bit late and I still pulled on the exit. So this lap, I'm going to TC entirely off. See how this feels. Turn 1, we had a little intervention over the outside curve before. We don't get it this time, obviously. A little bit careful on throttle pickup, so we've lost a bit on the exit. That's more my driving compared to the actual TC itself. But I'm more interested in the drivability of TC off, not necessarily the raw lap time. There's going to be slight variances anyway, just with my driving, but I'm more interested to see can I actually complete a lap at a decent level with TC off, and is it comfortable to drive. And so far, well, there you go. High speed stuff, very, very easy. Getting into the slower stuff now, let's see. This is where I'd expect to have a big snap. Still very stable. It was very similar to TC1, or TC11, I should say. The one click up from off. Not really getting a huge amount on the exits. You know, the TC kicking in slightly on the first level of intervention doesn't really seem to bog it down too much. Out here again, nice and stable. This will be the big test. This corner is always a little bit flaky on exit. We'll be a little bit more careful. And go at a small slide. Overall, it was manageable. We actually had a slightly better exit actually compared to the previous one. The last corner. Oh, a little bit of understeer there. Kept it out the wall. But there you go. Overall, lap time was looking pretty similar. And drivability was absolutely fine. Now, of course, there's still questions that are unanswered. You know, does running TC off negatively affect the tyres? Does it overheat the tyre? Do you get extra pressure, which then in turn turns to overheat or extra degradation or things like that? That all still remains to be seen. I've not had the opportunity to sit and do like a full stint with TC on versus TC off to really feel the difference, but you know, this is definitely something that we can look at for qualifying, is potentially turning the traction control off entirely, more specifically for these medium to high speed circuits where you don't have many slow speed traction zones. But what you could also see is potentially at tracks like Spa, where you get the first corner and the last chicane, those really low speed traction zones where you need that be able to punch the throttle quickly but get off the corner efficiently as well. You might see us having like TC1 or 2 in those corners, but then for the whole middle sector, all the high speed stuff is just having it turned off completely. So there could be some games to be played throughout the lap if you're really wanting to extract the absolute maximum out of the car. Then you could be easily playing some games with the TC, like turning it off and on, and depending on where you're at. Now with the ABS, I've done some more extensive testing with that, and it seems like the ABS actually, when the build first came out and I was trying it, I was saying on stream that I felt like the ABS was actually harsher than before. But after doing some more testing and exploring some other options, it actually feels that the ABS doesn't damage you as badly as it did before. It feels like it's more working how it would be expected to. So for example, if you're running a slightly higher ABS setting before, the tyre would start to micro slide, then the ABS would kick in to try and stop it, and that would cause a little bit of overheating in the tyre. It would cause a little bit of excess temperature build up, and it caused problems on the long run. What now seems to happen is the ABS is a little bit more proactive, and it doesn't necessarily slow you down any quicker, but it doesn't damage the tyre as badly as it did before. So if I was building a setup right now, after doing the extensive testing that I have and being able to explore everything that I can possible with the time I've got, is that lower TC definitely seems to be the way to go. I mean, you guys have seen the evidence there. Whether you run it off all the time is still questionable. I would advise that you run one click up from off, or at most 2 if you're struggling. You're wondering about the ABS. It seems that you can run slightly more ABS than you could in previous seasons, as it is a bit more of a support, not a hindrance like it was in the last 3, 4, 5 years, however long we've been dealing with GT3s. It's always been the case that ABS is a bad thing, but now it doesn't seem to be as bad. You still can't just go into a corner, mash 100% and use all the ABS to try and stop the car. That will still damage you, but you can use a little bit more of it than you could before. So overall, that's a pretty good change from iRacing on my side. The TC is still, I'm a little bit unsure. I mean, I know they don't run massive amounts of TC in real life, but yeah, it still remains to be seen really what this effect this is going to have along with the new series regulations for pit stops. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think below in the comments section. If you guys had a chance to try these GT3s extensively, are you enjoying them? Is there some elements you don't like? You know, what are some interesting things that you found with the cars that you weren't expecting? Yeah, it'd be great to hear from you guys. But with that, I will see you next week.